April the 17th, 2025. Guys, another bright sunny day here in central Mississippi. It's 80 degrees and the heat index is 80, so we're pretty balanced. It's warm, but in the shade it's nice, and it's about 40 degrees lower than I've seen it here at 120 in the heat indices before, so I'm not complaining about it. I think we're kind of getting in a warming trend now, but what you're looking at, guys, is the geomagnetic field and the current aurora status. Not much of one now. This is Europe back here, the U.S. in the brighter blue. That we're in the daylight now. And you're seeing a little more glow because the sun is coming. You can pretty much come right down the center of the dark side of the Earth, which would be a good Pink Floyd title. Anyway, the sun is coming from this direction. You can tell by the burn-off. It's quite a difference from yesterday. I just want to go back and show you an image from what we were dealing with yesterday. And I have a reason for coming back to this subject. Even though it's lightened up some, it did go to a strong G4, guys, and it was devastating to me. Worse than I've ever had it before, and it always affects me. And I know I'm going through some, excuse me, other issues, but as this thing was peaking, guys, I had to lay down, and I was very concerned about it ending up in the hospital. It was that bad. But it started easing up when that opening in our magnetic shield closed. I'm going to show you, go back and look at that. It lasted, and it was wide open for 9 hours. And it's saying here that it got to a G4 storm, very strong. You can see the KP index up in 6. 7 approaching 8 here yesterday. But guys, just remember this picture of what is kind of normal for what they call the auroral oval forecast. Here's your timestamp from yesterday. Notice bottom right. Look at that burn off, guys. Let me back down right there. That's what we were dealing with. And again, this is more of a medical video as it is a scientific video, because a lot of you were having very bad effects. I read it, just about every comment. Sometimes there's hundreds and hundreds, and I try to get to all of them. But guys, I could tell that it was affecting a lot of you, but I want to know in the comments, was it worse? I could possibly in where you were at, but during the peak of the storm and throughout that 9 hours, how did it make you feel? Is this something that we're going to be having to deal with more and more as we get closer to the heating of the earth, the scorching? And we talk about that with the fourth angel. Is this something we're going to have to deal with? Is it something we're going to have to prepare for as far as some type of shielded room? I've seen information about that, where people will have one room that's shielded that they get in during these type of events, just to keep from going through the nightmare that occurred yesterday. It's a little better today, but it was real strange the way that it happened, and I want to go to that chart as we talk about that. But again, look at the difference between yesterday, and I'm going to switch it to today. Again, it's almost a non-event at this point. You're always going to have some, both the North and South poles. And there's reports, guys, that the North Pole and the South Pole were both glowing at the same time. That's telling you how large and how the incoming solar wind was, and how completely encompassed our planet was. Big difference, isn't it, in one day? This is another chart I saved from yesterday. Again, timestamp the 16th. And this is what we were dealing with. This continued for 9 hours. Each one of these notches, guys, you can scroll down on the solar wind chart, and it'll give you an idea. But 9 hours of complete separation and a complete opening. I've never seen one that long, that smooth, and that wide open. We were getting bombarded for 9 hours. And if you go back to right here on the 15th, you can see that there was dips to the south, and that's what they call this. This is the north on the chart, and this is the south. When the red line dips south, that's when everything is opened up and we get bombarded. But we always see some type of dips like that, but this was just like boom, bright light on, intense radiation pouring in, terrible effects I know it was on me, and I'd like to hear from you guys. Some may not be affected by this at all, but it was the worst day for me since I realized this type of effects were happening many years ago. It was the worst day. Of course, I'm getting older. But then as this thing continued, it closed up a little before nightfall, and I could tell it. And then once it wasn't completely gone, and there's still residual effects now, dizziness and things like that. Not as bad as it was when I first woke up. Again, I'm telling you this as for comparisons. But as nightfall came in, then if you think about it like this, okay, the hole closed. And let me move to that chart. We'll do it like that. Now, this was from this morning, but I've got the current one. We're going to look at it. But notice, again, you can count the 9 hours through here. And when you see these purple areas, that's when we're wide open, guys. And this is the angle down here. But it was a quick closure. Look at that. Bam. Everything now is staying to the north. Even if you go back days and days, you'll see that the red line will invariably dip and be a slight opening. We're starting to see it now at this point. But it closed before nighttime. Now, this is what I was thinking about because I was dealing with it. It was very strong. That even though it closed at this point, it was not quite nightfall. We still had a couple of hours left of bright sunshine coming in at an angle, but it was bright. So what had happened was all the supply of highly energized and radioactive particles had been cut off right there, but they were still in our atmosphere. And as long as that sun was hitting those energized particles in the atmosphere, they were continuing to be active. But as the Earth rotated and we started to get the night coming in, nightfall, then it eased up. I noticed that it eased up more after nightfall than it did at the closing. There were still a couple of hours here that it was rough. But then later on in the night, I felt it come back slightly. And I don't know if that's when the auroras were very strong above us like we were seeing or not. But this is how I find out things. This is how I was the first one on the planet 12 years ago to tell people that, and I got really hit back hard about it, was trying to explain that solar flares caused earthquakes. We were the first here at BP Earthwatch. And now it's common. Okay, so my point is that it pays to pay attention, especially when it's something so crucial to your health and well-being. And scientifically, it has a lot of things. We saw volcanoes and earthquakes yesterday, but it pays to be aware of it. And when it affects you the way it was yesterday, you can't help but pay attention to it because that's about all you can do. Totally debilitating. Like I said, lay down in the cool bedroom, get quiet, and just tell yourself, I'm not going to the ER. Because with what we're dealing with here, they wouldn't understand that. I've got a doctor's appointment coming up in about 6 weeks that they're going to deal with some of the nerve damage in the neck, I think. And that's going to help somewhat. So you guys, if you're having heart problems, but they're saying your heart's fine, look into cervical angina. Some people will say it's a form of stenosis or cervical stenosis. But look it up because it will give you all of those. And many people walk out of the ER, went in with heart pains. They walk out and die because they were told, it happened to me. I didn't die, but they said that my heart was fine with all those symptoms. And they had no clue about any type of cervical angina. They still don't. But, and people walk out and die because it will kill you just as quick as a heart attack because your neck is shutting down the information your heart needs. It does a lot more than that, guys. There's probably 20 or 30 things that damage in your neck can cause that you would have no idea that's where it's coming from. But study the videos that I link, and that particular doctor down in Fort Myers probably has 100 videos. A lot of it's cervical, but different things, how it affects your sinuses and things like that. Let's look at the very current solar wind information. Now, this is the current information coming in from the satellites as of 2:07 p.m. Central Time today. Here's the 9-hour segment, right there. This was when the CMEs hit us the day before. Notice that? And you could feel the effects, but this was such a continuous blast. There was not much relief. Then everything jumped back north. Look how tightly it came right there, guys. Look at that. See, it slapped back together like a rubber band that had been stretched too far. It's kind of like that anyway. But everything except that one dip I showed you from this morning has stayed to the north, keeping everything closed right now. What are the effects of that? Well, if we scroll down, look at the solar wind is going down. We're still at an elevated level of 446 kilometers per second when the average is 320. That's going down, though, but it's still not back to normal. So is the temperature. And yesterday, things were not working in a parallel pattern. Now they're starting to do it more. Temperature's going down, wind speed's going down, and the density is going up. And the density is still rather strong. A lot of times, your average density will be like 3.5 or something like that. Your solar wind speed, 320 kilometers per second. But in this yesterday, it was not, everything was kind of backwards. But now the density's increasing. Remember the campfire smoke and the wind. When the wind slows down, the smoke gets denser. So we're getting bombarded still with some very strong protons. This is in centimeters cubed, and it's the thickness of the proton density and how much energy is involved and the power and the strength of this incoming solar wind. But I wanted to come here and talk about it, guys, because we're getting ready for a large coronal opening to turn straight towards our planet, and that is a very continuous stream. Again, I wanted to go talk about this scientifically, but also people start thinking about, I want all of you guys to start thinking about if it's affecting you. And it could start affecting much more people. As I think it's going to strengthen and get worse and worse. Just my opinion, I think we're in those times where that fourth angel is going to pour that vial out. We don't know the exact day, the exact year or month, but I think we're going to see it sooner than later. There's too much chaos going on the planet, every nation right now, and too many wars and rumors of wars. But guys, let's take a look at the current solar cameras and take a look at that large opening that would hold 1,000 of our planets that's about to turn straight to us and give us quite a few days of a steady wind speed, solar wind speed, or wind current. Now, this is the latest image of a combo of 3 cameras. Guys, you look at your timestamp, 1847:09. That's universal time on the 17th. This is the opening right there, and extends up into here when you see this blue. You've got some smaller ones here. The magnetic canopy, is a little weaker in some areas. What we're going to see is a lot of solar energy coming from here. Then right behind it, a series of very large sunspots. Now, these are where you get your filament releases if they come into contact with one of these large filaments here. They're going to explode off the sun in a whip-like motion. That's what just happened to us. Or you can just have an X-flare that has a coronal mass ejection with it. Remember yesterday, this very thin, very condensed, powerful line right there? That is above the surface of the sun. As a matter of fact, if you could look very close at it, you would see it's attached by what looks like 100 small tornadoes, all of them spinning inside this mass of helium energy. You got a couple sunspots here, but this one could release. It's very close to the energy that is needed here for it to reach over and touch and get zapped back. But you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sunspots here. Now, if you were to draw a line straight across the sun at the equator, the Earth is not at that ecliptic. I talk about that quite a bit. It's further south. It's down here. So the southern hemisphere has more effect on the Earth than the northern hemisphere. But when you have a full halo explosion, it radiates out 180 into the entire solar system, not just Earth. And yesterday the planet was enveloped again the auroras matched on the south and north pole. So it was a complete involvement. We see it always is, but this was very strong. Now let's take a look at some of the moving images coming from our sun. But this right here, guys, is going to be solid solar stream output. Now we're looking at the Solar Dynamics Observatory. That's a link on our website at bpearthwatch.com, and we call it the SDO. But what's happening is you can't tell it on this image, but there's a big triangle right here, not much activity, real flat, and that is that coronal hole that we're seeing. You're seeing different activity all over the sun, different intertwinings of the filaments and the sunspots and those in the different areas there where there's a magnetic canopy. Here, there's not much one, you're not seeing it. What you are seeing, though, and like I said, we're going to have the energy coming from this opening, and then look at the sunspots right there. That's a large sunspot, guys. The one behind it is a large too. And you notice everything's rotating to the right. It takes about 27.5 days or so. If, say, you stopped it here and the same sunspot made it, and a lot of times they'll make 2 or 3 revolutions around the sun there. But it would be back in that same place in about 27.5 days, depending on exactly where it's at. So that's what's happening. So for the half that time, the Earth is in what would be called the broadside. If you remember the old sailing ships, you turn sideways and all the cannons go off. So we've got about half that, about 2 weeks of being in an area that you could be affected by a sunspot. Could be a CME, could be a sunspot, especially when you get into the X flares and things like that. Now, if they're on this side and they were to explode now, they're going to not really affect the Earth that much unless it's a strong flare that radiates in a 180. You'll get the side energy. But if a CME coming off the side, guys, not a flare, a lot of times it's very directional. And so it's depending on the side of the sun it's on and whether it's at what angle it's top or bottom, things like that. But these are all going to be lining up and pretty much broadside to our planet. This satellite and its 12 cameras give us a direct Earth-facing perspective. So this is what we're seeing. I'll show you one more image. Now, what I want to show you here quickly, and I'm going to go to another SDO image. But guys, this is a scale of Earth and the moon to the sun. This tiny dot you see right there, that's the Earth. The moon is a dot you can't hardly see. Just to give you a perspective, I think I did the math one time, and it would take just on the side of the sun that we can see 119 of our planets to kind of put a necklace across it right there. So you pretty much double that. But that's the actual scale. And when you see the big sunspots and all, you're talking about 20, 30 Earths could just go into that sunspot in the center of it. We'll take a look at that also. And going back to the sunspot image, guys, you can see how many of those small dots that were Earth would fit just inside the sunspot. And the sun is 93 million miles away from us. I know there's some flat Earth people out there that they're going to have to say something. It's in their mental DNA. But they concern me, and I think there may be a mental problem. I don't know if they were dropped on their head when they were kids and their head's flat. I know a couple of people that are flat earthers, and they do look a little bit weird. But I hope it's not a medical condition, because the beauty of our Father in the images that you see of the sun and the moon, the earth, why would no man could reproduce those even with AI? They couldn't even conceive of it. And why go to the trouble? If it's a flat earth, it's a flat earth, and we're living under a dome or whatever they say, right? But then why go to the trouble to show the magnificence of the creation of our Father? Like I said, most of them are probably also Democrats. I'm not trying to make fun of anybody, but it does concern me. Now, something else about these sunspots, and it all has to do with magnetics, the solar wind, the shields, the heliosphere of the sun that expands out and encompasses all the planets in our solar system, and it's a shield. It's a broad shield, and each of the planets, Mars doesn't have much of one, but each planet has its shields, and they're all created by the solar wind. But the sun has its, again, the heliosphere, and it's huge, very huge. But everything's magnetic. That's my point. So are the sunspots. When we're dealing with these, what you want to watch for is here you can see mostly red. That's one charge. Let's say that's positive. Then you'll see this one right here, red and blue. Suddenly, in the same sunspot group, you have opposite charges. And they arc when they get close enough together, and these are growing. And you get a CME, or either an X flare or a very strong solar flare. The larger these groups are, the more active they are. And you're actually going to see when this one gets a little further around, a little more to the right here, and we get a better view, it's also composed of double magnetic polarities. This one may develop it. We'll just have to keep an eye on it as it moves closer to the planet. Here you're seeing one that's the opposite polarity, not much red involved. But when you see the combo, guys, right there, that's where you're going to have the problems because of the arcing effect. Everything's magnetic, and it's an electric universe. But this kind of expanding science project is what I'm calling it, about these health effects. A lot of people they're not aware of it. And they may have been having the same symptoms that the people that know about it, but they have no clue why. They're working out in the sun or whatever they're doing, and they're just, well, I'm just having a bad day, or what did I do? What has happened to me, when you need to know in order to know what you can do about it. If you have no idea where the problem's coming from, and most of the doctors don't, then you really have a problem. So research for yourself. I'm going to put another link in this video in the comments about some of the information we're getting out of Fort Myers, and because it is so eye-opening, especially if you're having to deal with it or you have friends and family. I already saw a comment a couple of days ago. I think the lady said that now she thinks she knows why her husband, who's very close to my age, is having all the problems he's had. Been going through the same group, the same cycle of your heart is fine, even though that and dizziness and all the other things. But it's when, again, just a few weeks ago, I found out what this was. And I knew that I'd had neck problems 15 years ago. I had a steel plate put in it from a working accident. And it was very same cycle, really, of a year of them sending me to heart doctors, when the whole time I was telling them that it was in my neck, but it was affecting my heart. But they had to go through thousands of dollars of tests so they could get the insurance money, and then tell you nothing's wrong with you. But my neurologist realized what was going on at that point, and they put a plate in my neck, and it's helped me be here for 15 years. But your bones get weak, and you got screws going through bone and things like that, and you're still working, you're still moving. But when you realize what's wrong, then you can take more precautions, maybe a neck brace. There's professionals that will do one, or you can, if nothing else, get one off the shelf. Just something to limit the pressure and movement on your neck, because, guys, it looks like there's so much that comes from neck damage that affects your entire body. We know that, but not like I didn't know it in the detail that I'm finding out about now. So I know some people are tired of talking about the sun, but this is important to me, and I know I'm not the only one out there. We just got to keep an eye on the incoming solar wind from that opening, and the possibility of solar flares from that group of sunspots that are turning to the right and will be Earth facing very soon. Again, we're watching it, guys. You watch it. It's a heads up. Be safe.